So there are a few simple things that you can do to help improve your performance when going to a tournament. I'm talking more specifically about a local tournament, not necessarily a high level tournament. If you're going to a high level tournament, odds are there are more advanced things that you need to keep in consideration. But when you're going to a locals, a lot of the people are going to be either new or old players that don't necessarily like going to high profile events, or really good players that just want to play a casual tournament of a few rounds. So these are a few things that can kind of help you elevate your game to try and make things a little bit easier on yourself. First off, keep your deck a secret. Information is very powerful, and it may seem rude, but not sharing what deck you're on can cause people to misplay against you. Either they end on something that isn't good against you, or if you scoop early game one and don't give your opponent the opportunity to see what you're playing, sometimes they can side wrong. The next thing that I would say is when you're siding, a lot of people don't know this, but when you present your deck to the opponent to be cut, that's the point where your side decking is done and you don't have the opportunity to do anything else. If your opponent's shuffling through their deck and deciding what they want to take out and put in, and you tell your opponent that you're planning on going first, they now have the knowledge and can side accordingly, or vice versa. So do not tell your opponent whether you're going first or second, games 2 or 3, until both of you, or at least your opponent, is done siding and the decks have been presented. Be aware of your own tells. Checking one set card more than the others, or pausing when your opponent activates a certain type of effect or after they've summoned a certain type of monster, can really kind of give away what cards you have at your disposal. If your opponent goes to activate a draw card and you pause and go, thinking, and then your opponent activates a card that summons from hand and you don't hesitate at all, it can seem pretty obvious what type of interaction you're holding on to. Or if you're checking your set cards over and over and you check one over and over but you leave the other one alone, that may give away to your opponent that the one you're checking over and over is really good and the one you're not checking is not. This is, I believe, technically illegal, but a lot of people do it at the local level. Don't tell your opponent if you have no interruptions. If you're looking at your 5 card hand and you don't have a single hand trap to interrupt them, don't let your opponent know that. A lot of times people have certain plays that they'll do to play around certain pieces of interaction, but if they do those plays, then they lose out on certain pieces of interruption, or they may lose out on hand advantage. So you really want to make your opponent sweat just a little bit. Understanding your win con is also extremely important. Sometimes tunneling into certain interruption can be more powerful than just going for the full end board. If you know that your opponent's playing a graveyard deck and you have access to a rank 4, but going into that rank 4 means that your board isn't as powerful as it would have been, end on the rank 4 like Dweller, because you know that these blowout, lingering floodgate effects are going to cause a lot more damage than they would otherwise. Think through your plays before you commit. Some opponents don't let you take plays back, and if your opponent doesn't let you take back a play, that is well within their right. A lot of people at locals will allow you to do that, especially if they know that you're just testing the deck for like a bigger tournament that's coming up. But a lot of people take locals seriously because it is their only opportunity to play Yu-Gi-Oh! So they want to play at the absolute top level that they can. Be aware of time. Be constantly checking the clock. How much time do I have left? Do I think that I can pull off a combo with the amount of time that's left? And if time is starting to run out and you know that you can't win this game, but there's a chance you could draw into a card that helps you win the next game, just scoop. Just forfeit that game and move on to the next one. Because staying in that game where the chances of you winning are extremely small are probably going to lose you the match. Your opponent may be able to side something in that wins them the game automatically. And you don't want to get into a situation where you have to do that. If your opponent is going too quickly, don't be afraid to ask them to slow down. And vice versa. If they're slow playing, don't be afraid to ask them to speed things up. And if they start to get, indignant with you, if they start to talk back and tell you that they're being fined, then don't be afraid to call a judge. The judge is your friend. And being willing to call a judge in those scenarios can really spell the difference between you being salty at the end and you feeling like you did everything you could to win. In tandem to that last one, don't be afraid to just stop and read all of your opponent's cards. If they're telling you what all their cards do, that's fine, but some people will leave certain effects out and not tell you. If you see a card with a lot of text on it and your opponent says, "Oh, that just summons a monster from hand," and you go, "That's way too much text for it to just be a summon from hand." You take it over and you look at it, and it also has a secondary effect that really screws up your game plan. I mean, you basically saved yourself from having to deal with it. You can imperm it and not have to deal with it, ghost ogre it and get it off the field, whatever. But you need to understand that not every opponent that you run into is going to fully give you all the information you need about the current game state. And last but not least, your opponent is not the head judge. So if your opponent does something or commits to a play and you think, that seems wrong, I feel like they're not allowed to do that, call a judge and ask them. Even if your opponent is insisting that they know the ruling, there is absolutely nothing to be lost from calling a judge and asking for their opinion. So be willing to ask the judge for help if you think your opponent is saying or doing something that isn't correct. And that's 10 things that can help you in your performance at a tournament. So if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe down there, hit the notification bell, and go ahead and put a comment in the comments below. Were any of these things that you had never thought of? What are some things that you started doing that helped improve your tournament experience? Go ahead and let me know down there. I'll see you guys in the next one.